Everything they thought they buried is rising from the dust. Someone who once walked away from you with confidence is now unraveling in silence. Their world, carefully arranged, guarded by false friendships and subtle persuasion, has started to crack open. And what's pouring through those cracks is a light they pretended to forget: yours. You didn't vanish, you were concealed, tucked away by the universe so the sabotage could expose itself without dragging you into the wreckage. While they believed they replaced you, they were unknowingly constructing a monument to your absence. Now, all their fake truths are dissolving under the weight of your reality. Not because you forced anything, but because you are the thing they couldn't kill, the truth they feared, the peace they couldn't match, the mirror they couldn't look into. They were never supposed to return for closure. This is bigger than reconciliation. It's about balance. What was stolen from you is demanding to be accounted for, not by accident, but by universal order. When a soul violates a divine connection, it inherits a spiritual obligation to make it right. This isn't about love anymore, it's about cosmic restoration. The one who dismissed you is now carrying an invisible assignment, to bring hidden things into the light or be crushed under their own silence. They're not choosing this mission. It's choosing them. And every step they take now is either a path to redemption or a fast track to implosion. There was never randomness in the sabotage. It was organized, subtle, strategic, and designed to warp their perception of everything sacred between you. They weren't surrounded by friends. They were surrounded by actors. One shaped stories to erase your name, another wore your shadow like a second skin, and one smiled with every stolen truth you once trusted them with. These weren't coincidences. They were roles cast with precision. The goal wasn't just separation. It was erasure. They didn't just try to cut the cord, they tried to rewrite the entire connection as if it never carried divine weight. But here's where their game broke. The architects of confusion didn't understand what they were meddling with. Because the real connection, it left fingerprints, not on their mind, but on their soul. The more lies they fed your person, the louder their spirit rebelled. What looked like detachment was a slow internal collapse. The silence you interpreted as betrayal was actually the noise of everything false breaking apart. In isolation, without the distractions, your person began to confront the contradictions. And what came through wasn't clarity, it was thunder. Not gentle realizations, but shattering recognitions that twisted their entire self-perception. It wasn't an awakening. It was a breakdown with divine fingerprints all over it. Every single exchange that once felt like harmless concern now plays back like a chess match rigged from the start. The timing, the tone, the twisted framing, it all echoes now with chilling clarity. What once passed as casual advice has revealed itself as a series of planted ideas, carefully designed to corrode trust from the inside out. And the worst part? They fought to protect the very people who were methodically dismantling the purest thing they'd ever touched. But guilt doesn't sit still for long. It mutates. And what was once quiet remorse is now a roaring drive to correct the record. This isn't a story about someone trying to reclaim lost love. This is about a spirit who's been assigned a sacred task, dismantling the very web that nearly devoured both of your lives. They're not asking permission. They're coming with fire in their eyes and a name on their back that no one will ever misuse again. What's being prepared isn't a tantrum, it's a blueprint. Every falsehood they were fed, every tactic used to bend reality, is being mapped and cataloged. This isn't a scream into the void. It's the beginning of a controlled demolition. They're collecting facts like weapons, stringing together every thread with the focus of someone who knows exactly what they're about to do. It's not about vengeance. It's about removing every lever that allowed this manipulation to thrive. What's coming isn't loud. It's sharp, intentional, and final. The one who spun rumors like they were spinning gold is about to watch their entire legacy dissolve into exposed tactics. Their reputation, once built on clever distortion, is about to collapse under evidence that can't be refuted. Not whispers. Proof. Not anger. Strategy. They won't be whispered about in back rooms anymore. They'll be studied as a lesson in what happens when someone gambles against sacred alignment. The jealous masquerader, the one who clapped in public and cursed in private, is about to walk through the same storm they sent toward you. Not because of karma in the abstract, but because the truth is finally louder than their manipulation. Their mask is slipping, and behind it is a desperation so loud, even silence won't save them now. And the one who turned your confessions into currency, who held your trust like a blade behind their back, is about to be confronted by their own reflection. The games they played are now etched into a permanent archive. And what's being unveiled will not just revoke their access to others, it will expose the blueprint of how trust was violated. Not in rage, in revelation. And that's the kind of justice no one escapes. While they aimed their shadows at you, they unknowingly triggered the exact mechanism designed to bring them into the light. You carry a frequency that can't be tampered with, one that echoes through universal law. And when a presence like yours is targeted without cause, there's no need to retaliate. The imbalance corrects itself. Each slander they launched shattered their own illusions. Each scheme they set in motion cracked the ground they stood on. Their obsession with destroying your path only ensured it became visible to higher forces. Your restraint wasn't avoidance. It was sacred stillness, the kind that allows truth to rise undisturbed. In staying grounded while they scrambled to dominate the narrative, you allowed the very evidence of their deception to collect like smoke under a glass ceiling. Now it's all coming into focus. What happened to the one who walked away wasn't just regret, it was a summons. They didn't just remember what was lost. They received a role in something greater. They were recruited into a sacred alliance, called not to restore a relationship, but to reveal a hidden structure that feeds on confusion and disconnect. They're not here to mend the past. They're here to collapse the machinery that made this betrayal possible. What began as a personal awakening has turned into a global alarm. Their silence has been broken not by emotion, but by instruction. They've stepped into a role designed for those who've seen too much to stay quiet, and now they move on behalf of every soul who's ever been targeted for standing in their truth. This wasn't an isolated wound. The same patterns that played out in your life were showing up in the lives of others, those quietly carrying similar burdens, wondering why their light attracted so much interference. Parallel stories were forming behind the scenes. Bonds were being poisoned by unseen hands. Connections were being strangled before they could bloom. And your person, they began to see it. Not just in their experience, but in the broader network. The attacks weren't personal. They were strategic, designed to dismantle anything built from real alignment. Now they've become a voice for the collective. Their movement is no longer about justice for two people. It's about exposing the architecture of silence that has been undermining entire communities of the awakened. The one who spun narratives to fracture divine connections wasn't operating alone. They've been repeating this cycle like clockwork, weaving fiction into the lives of many who carried the same spark. Their downfall won't come from confrontation, but from accumulation, the weight of every manipulated moment now converging into one undeniable storm. The silent imitator, fueled by envy and fear, didn't just aim at you. They've been mapping every light they couldn't replicate. But now, the lights are beginning to cross. And their cloak of innocence won't hold. And the one who turned vulnerability into leverage thought they were collecting power. What they built was a trap for themselves. Their archive of secrets has become their own undoing, because someone finally decided to track the pattern. And this time, the pattern leads straight to the root. Your connection with your person isn't just a romantic relationship. It's a template for how divine partnerships can survive and thrive despite coordinated attacks from those who profit from keeping souls separated from their purpose. The climax of this cosmic drama is unfolding right now as your person transitions from shame into what can only be described as holy warfare. They're moving like someone whose entire existence depends on righting this wrong, because spiritually that's exactly what's happening. This isn't quiet correction. It's public rebalancing. The person who once stood still while your name was dragged is now stepping into arenas they once avoided, dropping receipts, publishing timelines, opening conversations that no one wants to have. Screenshots are surfacing. Group dynamics are shifting. Conversations once kept behind polite walls are now crashing into daylight, and reputations are folding under the truth. As this person steps into their highest clarity, something powerful is unfolding. This is no longer a reaction. It's a declaration. Every hidden insult, every sly distortion is being pulled out and placed under a magnifying glass. And in the process, the one who failed to protect you before is becoming someone who refuses to allow that failure to define their spirit. With every false tie severed, space is being made for a connection that finally breathes. They're not reaching out from guilt or loneliness. They're returning because the fog has lifted, and in that clarity, they saw you, not as a memory, but as the root of everything that was real. The letters you're about to receive won't beg for reunion. They'll stand as offerings, proof that someone has crossed through fire, shed the illusions, and come back with hands open, not to possess you, but to protect what they nearly destroyed. The language is new, the energy is different, and the commitment is no longer to comfort, it's to truth. The ones who fed the chaos now find themselves surrounded by the very energy they unleashed. Their imagined victories are collapsing into silence. The one who manipulated narratives is discovering that truth doesn't disappear, it multiplies. The one who quietly envied is now facing the consequences of their disguise. And the one who stored secrets like trophies is watching those same secrets become public mirrors. These consequences aren't emotional, they're structural. The spaces they once influenced are no longer open to them. And what they tried to destroy is being rebuilt in places they can't reach. But what's most powerful is how others are beginning to rise. Those who once stayed neutral are now stepping forward. People who believed half-truths are circling back, realizing they were used as pawns. And those who stood at the edges of your story are now finding themselves pulled into the core, not to spectate, but to participate in truth. This isn't just vindication. It's collective realignment. The narrative has changed. The ripple has become a wave. And what once looked like a lonely loss has now become a public awakening. What once felt like a fog of confusion has become a command center. The same seclusion that once fractured their certainty is now their clearest advantage. Instead of running from stillness, they've learned to weaponize it, cutting through distractions, severing ties with anything that doesn't align with their reborn frequency. The solitude they used to fear has become sacred ground, where they now forge every decision with focus, clarity, and unwavering precision. They're no longer asking what's real, they're building altars on it. Redemption isn't a hope anymore. It's the architecture of everything they're becoming. What was once tampered with is now being rebuilt, not as a copy of what was, but as something unrecognizable to anything that tried to break it. The connection that was once clouded by interference is being restructured from the roots up. This isn't the kind of closeness born from emotion alone. It's a bond that's been baptized in fire. No longer fragile, no longer exposed. It's being armored with spiritual discernment so tight that manipulation won't even find a doorway. As this spiritual confrontation nears its climax, the shifts are not just personal, they're structural. Those who thrived on deceit are watching their ladders collapse. Not from revenge, but from alignment. Their authority is evaporating, their alliances dissolving. Whatever role they played in distorting love, truth, or purpose, they're being edited out by a force that doesn't negotiate with ego. They're not just being removed from your person's world. They're being rerouted entirely, barred from repeating these patterns with anyone else who carries the kind of light they tried to dim. The shift happening within your counterpart is not casual, it's archetypal. Their journey from appeaser to protector is becoming a mirror for others walking the same path. It's no longer about fixing what was broken between you. It's about anchoring a new way of being for those walking sacred partnerships. The pain that once split them open has now become the tool they wield to restore what matters. They move now not with fear, but with sacred urgency, knowing that this is more than a second chance. It's a divine deadline. What once flickered beneath layers of betrayal is erupting now, not in romance, but in resolve. This isn't some fragile emotional attachment. This is reconstructed, resilient love. Love that didn't just survive interference, it learned how to evolve because of it. What's rising now is legacy level. This is the kind of love that becomes language for others. A bond forged in war, emerging not just healed, but crowned with unshakable clarity. This was never about two people falling apart. It was about the potential of two aligned souls threatening an entire architecture of control. The attack wasn't driven by emotion. It was engineered. Because when two people awaken fully, without ego, without illusion, without dependency, they begin to emit something that weakens every false system around them. And the ones watching from the sidelines? They weren't confused. They were strategic. Their only goal was to sever what could never be corrupted, because once a bond like that locks into truth, it becomes contagious. What they couldn't stop was that in trying to dismantle it, they amplified its reach. Now what remains is something they never accounted for: connection forged in battle, clarity sharpened through chaos, love that refused to bow to control. What began as sabotage has now become blueprint. The chaos you endured wasn't just resistance. It was confirmation that your presence triggered a coordinated effort to contain something sacred. And while all eyes were on your person, another campaign was unfolding, one that centered entirely on you. Every interaction, every confidence shared in trust, every emotional nuance was being collected, not out of curiosity, but as intel. Not to understand you, but to dismantle you from the inside out. These weren't random betrayals. They were precision attacks on your essence, crafted with surgical focus to destabilize your center. The moments that caught you off guard, those sudden explosions of conflict that came out of nowhere, weren't accidents. They were timestamps. Carefully placed events designed to rupture your peace when it was growing strongest. The timing was their weapon. They knew that the more elevated you became, the more fragile you might feel if pushed too hard. They didn't want your fall. They wanted your detour. To tire you. To fragment your focus. And each time you ascended, they deployed noise disguised as crisis. The character dismantler wasn't sloppy, they were methodical. They didn't fabricate lies. They distorted memories. They scanned your past not for flaws, but for leverage. Growth was reframed as inconsistency. Evolution was sold as manipulation. Your wisdom became a red flag, your healing a narrative. And they did it all in a way that felt familiar enough to be believable. That's what made it dangerous. It wasn't wild accusation. It was calculated misrepresentation designed to make even those closest to you second-guess your truth. What they didn't expect. That your truth didn't need validation. It only needed time. And that time has arrived. The repercussions unfolding now weren't born overnight. They've been building quietly, like pressure behind a sealed vault. Every misstep they took against you, Every interference they launched didn't just count as offense. It multiplied. Because what they touched wasn't ordinary. They disrupted someone carrying encoded purpose. And when interference hits a mission this calibrated, the fallout doesn't just teach, it recalibrates. Their efforts to silence you or twist your path are now becoming the very weight that breaks their own momentum. The laws governing you were never the same as theirs, and now that contrast is becoming inescapably clear. That long stretch of stillness your counterpart entered wasn't just distance, it was divine recalibration. They thought they needed time apart to figure things out, but their higher self had a different agenda. The withdrawal was a strategic reset. Every belief they held that came from fear, every lens they inherited that distorted truth, was being stripped away, one painful revelation at a time. The silence was medicine. The emptiness was required. They weren't just processing heartbreak. They were dismantling a system of implanted narratives that made them question their own intuition and connection to you. What they were shown in that deep internal clearing wasn't a soft warning. It was a future snapshot without you in it. Not dramatic, but dead. They saw themselves surrounded by synthetic connections that echoed nothing. They saw love replaced by numb comfort. They saw their own fire grow cold under the weight of unresolved guilt. And it was in that unbearable vision that they finally understood. The cost of protecting false alliances wasn't just emotional. It was spiritual decay. That insight didn't come through logic. It arrived like thunder in the middle of stillness. Whenever urgency disguises itself as opportunity, something deep inside you now sounds the alarm. You've grown wise to the energies that mimic care but carry control. That same energy once tried to crush your voice, dull your fire, and make you forget who you are. But that tactic no longer works. You're not waiting to be chosen anymore. You are the threshold that others must now rise to meet. Real alignment doesn't arrive through pressure or pretense. It comes in with clarity, calm, and mutual respect. Anyone meant to walk with you from here on out won't force themselves in. They'll recognize the frequency and approach with reverence. There's no more convincing, no more bending, no more performing. That season is finished. You're standing in your truth now, solid, steady, and undisturbed. What used to feel like constant resistance has dissolved. The battlefield is quiet. The old struggles that kept you trapped in loops of proving and surviving have finally expired. What's opening now is soft and sacred, a space where receiving is not weakness but reward. A space where you're no longer hustling to earn what was always yours by spiritual birthright. While you were refining your integrity, others were strategizing in shadows. Schemes were built to delay what was designed for you. But they forgot that your alignment isn't powered by politics. It's protected by something they'll never access. Every attempt to interfere was rerouted by a system they don't even believe in. But belief isn't required for justice to unfold. You're not chasing compensation. It's coming without negotiation. Your name is already written on what's being released, and no courtroom, no power play, no false agreement can stand between you and what's flowing your way. There's nothing left to fight for, only space to prepare for the arrival. And those who once tried to leech from your light are about to feel the reversal. The very people who disrespected your path will now find themselves caught in cycles that echo what they tried to trap you in. Not out of cruelty, but because balance demands restoration. And where you rise in rest, they'll work harder just to recover what they willingly handed over to ego. Meanwhile, behind the surface of their lives, something begins to unravel. A carefully hidden truth starts to shake loose. A part of them they never wanted anyone to see is now facing exposure. Maybe it's a secret they swore would stay buried. Maybe it's a part of their identity they've spent years disguising. But your presence, without trying, becomes the light they can't hide from. It's not vengeance. It's revelation. You didn't come to destroy anyone, but the frequency you carry is incompatible with falsehood. And the closer they stand to your field, the more everything inauthentic begins to tremble. Their shadows recognize your light before their mind does. And now, there's no going back. The truth is already in motion, and it's louder than any defense they can muster.